Pairing. Audio sounds good. Visuals good. Setting up your meeting. Boom. Here we go. Cool. Right, I'm going to hit record here. Great stuff. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live chat with me, Tim Sheaf, on Wear the Rope. And we got our favorite guest of all time. We don't have many guests. We mostly just get this man because he's a special human to me and to us, most of us listening, I think. So I don't want to, yeah, you don't need the congratulations anyway, because I think your work is enjoy in itself with what the discoveries you make and how you're able to appreciate your body. So this is episode 3 with David Weck. Thanks for joining us, David.
Thank you, Tim. I'm really looking forward to this. Very much looking forward to this.
It's been a few months, and I think we paced it right. We don't want to oversaturate it, and it gives you time to build up new discoveries and things that you're really passionate about and come and share. I think kind of where we left off, we covered like the Bosu stuff. We got into the rope. We just about got up to the pro pulsers. But and that will lead us nicely to the pro pulsar, and then what you're currently the moderations you're making to the pro pulsers, what they actually do, because I think there's many of our audience aren't too sure on that. I'd love to cover actually the Weck steps as well, because I think I do get questions often about the Weck steps, the soul steps, and obviously you've got the big deck now as well. But I think off the bat, because this is a rope flow channel, I'd love to start just discussing a bit of rope flow, because for me, I just love. I've like put it down so many times, and honestly, this is like one of the longest seasons I've had of enjoying rope flow for weeks, for months on end now. Going to the gym, getting it out every session. My body feels good. I can put music on and get right into a rhythm, and it just feels so good. And so you've obviously been doing rope flow the longest out of any human. Have you found with your rope flow practice that it waxes and wanes, and that you come back and have new seasons with it, or what's your journey with it like?
Yes, for me, it's very organic in that sense. So in the beginning was like super, super intense, beginning with the first 30 days, defining it as 30 days every day. I'm going to get as good as I possibly can, but I'm not going to jump through it. And so that kicked it off. And in the beginning, it was very intense. I did it all the time. And I used to carry a bag around I spent a month in New York City once where I would carry a bag from my brother's apartment over to the west side, right on the waterfront. And I don't know, I mean, the bag was heavy because I had so many different ropes in it. And every rope is its own unique frequency. And so, depending upon the length, the composition, the weight, it's going to cut the air just different. So I had, speed ropes, I had heavy ropes, I had everything in between. And I would just put on music and flow with that rope for hours. And because I was, still trying to pioneer and mine it for all it was worth. So I had that incentive. And then I had the martial and athletic carryover incentive. So I invested super heavily in it. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm checking my microphone. Sorry, I had the wrong mic plugged in. Hopefully that sounds a lot better for people. Sorry, carry on. It's fascinating.
Okay, so, but there have been periods of time where, I just end up not doing the rope for, several months, because the whole point of it is the carryover to your life. And,
Amen.
The analogy that I would give is we begin with the wire, right? The cord, the connection, and the objective is to go wireless so that you no longer need that feedback tool because you are integrated. So it's like going from a rotary dial phone, that's attached by a wire that, every so often you have to untangle, to a cell phone where, I could be anywhere and I don't need the rope. But then when I inevitably come back to it, I'm able to now mine it for more. And I think I do that with pretty much all of my inventions, in the sense that if you're just going to think of an 80-20 rule, where you're going to go at something to try to get 100, the first 80% is going to come more rapidly. And then as you get to the 20%, the gains are less, it's less, there's a diminishing return to how far. So you sort of can't get to 100 all in one go. So if you get to 80 and then you move on to another thing, that because you have that under your belt, you're able to now assimilate that other task faster and go further, and you get your 80 on that. When you come back to the 20 that you didn't get, you get 80% of that 20 very rapidly. And
Mm.
then it's a process of on and off, on and off. And I just let it be organic. So I don't program out some calendar and say, oh, I'm going to do this. For me, everything's organic in that sense, because I have no specific training goal. Like there's not a date when I want to do something that I'm, everything's geared to that. Mine's just an ongoing process. And
Can I
so,
just tune into that real quick? Because
yeah,
this is something that's so different from most people that train, is they constantly have a goal that they're working towards, a race or an event or a competition or something, and it changes the emotion that you train with often. Whereas I see in you, and I'm learning this myself just organically, like you say, focusing on how you feel every day. Whereas if you have like this end peak goal, you can start to sacrifice and not listen to your body, and you're not tuning in. And then you can have that peak competition, and then you'd be diminished for like weeks afterwards because you've overburnt yourself, something like that. Which, not to say that you can't do that stuff as well, but when I train with every day, just how does this feel in my body? I notice much more steady improvement that way. Is that, and that's something you're
yeah,
focused on as well, right? Is that
yeah.
intuitive?
I'm 100. Yeah, I'm 100% by feel and doing what's appropriate. Now that I'm studying jujitsu, and I've just started studying like the formal technique of boxing. Um, those are my goals and objectives of where I'm, really on a learning curve. And so everything else sort of serves that and goes around that.
Mm.
And Chris Chamberlain, his training philosophy is I want to be right now ready, constantly building and improving, as opposed to seeking the peaks. And I think it's a both sides utilized approach, because if your goal is to win an Olympic medal, well, the only race that matters is the championship final race.
Yeah.
So you'll see the sprinters, they don't go full out in the trial runs and the preliminary heats. They just have to place at a certain, if I'm in the first three of my heat, well, I get to go to the next round. So they'll back off if they're going to win. And when the lights are on and the people are watching, that's the performance. And so that's what makes a professional, is you are able to do it when it counts. The amateur can do it in practice and can't do it in the game. And that's the difference. So since I don't have any event that I'm trying to compete at, I really don't have to discipline at all to land on that particular date. And I think most people are in that situation, and most people get to that situation. So a right now ready capacity becomes the priority if you don't have like that specific date.
Mm.
And that I enjoy the right now ready capacity, that if I want to go sprint, okay, I just go sprint. And, you know, faster is faster. So if you're on path or not. Higher is higher, longer is longer, all those things that gives you the empirical proof of improvement. So it's not pretend. And in my life, like I don't want to have to foam roll for 20 minutes before I have to go put out the fire, right? I want to run over
Yeah.
and be useful in crisis, as opposed to hold on a minute. I'm not ready yet. So I think that
Definitely. Mm.
you have, and I remember you even telling me that you eschewed the competitive aspect of running, where it was more you were into just the joy, find the joy in the running. And I do have a competitive sense, so I will overdo it at times just because of enthusiasm and passion for, like, oh, I
Mm.
want to go further. And sometimes I'll overdo it, and then get some little twinge in the body where, I shouldn't have gone that hard, because I got so carried away in the moment.
Mm.
I think you tend to be more disciplined in that sense, that you're prioritizing the feels good and that because of just your personality. You
Well,
know,
I definitely still have. Well, I have the competitive tendencies. I'm just trying to. I guess my spiritual practices have kind of got me to challenge that a little bit more in myself. But I can absolutely do the same thing where I can get caught up in a moment and push a little bit too hard. I'm just trying to focus more on the feels good in the moment, and that doesn't mean that you can't still have a sprint and enjoy it and go like balls to the wall. It just means that you get to 80% and pull back or something. Yeah, I mean, you can still go to full speed, but you just not going full speed for 100 meters. You know, you go full speed for 20 meters and then you pull down or something.
yeah, well, and I think it's very interesting. You know, if your objective is go your fastest, every step has to beget a better step. And 100 meters is interesting because you can't accelerate through the 100. So a sprinter has the objective to crescendo up to a top speed and try to hold on to the
Yeah.
top speed as long as they can.
Yeah.
Whereas, and so you have a burden to accelerate, but
Compared to 60 meters, which would be like, the 40-yard dash, I guess. Is that the like?
yes, the 40-yard dash is, there's more haste in it because you're accelerating the whole time essentially, and the sprinter has to be a little bit more patient to get up to fifth gear, whereas the 40-yard dash you never get to fifth gear, so
Okay.
you're never up tall going actually the fastest. And if you look at something like the long jump,
Mm,
it has no burden of acceleration. So with the long jump, you know how many steps you take. If you were to ask your average sprinter who does the 1, the 2, or the 4, many of them won't even know how many steps they do in that. Whereas
mm.
if you have a discipline like the hurdles, you know that I'm taking this many steps between this hurdle and this
4
hurdle,
steps
right?
between every hurdle or whatever it is, depending on the,
Well,
yeah,
you
110 to
have to have
400.
you
Yeah.
have to have that you have to have that rhythm and consistency to navigate those obstacles,
Yeah.
where that becomes the priority. And in a long jump, you'll see that, you get to build it a little bit slower,
Yeah.
so that you can ensure that every step is begetting a better step. Whereas if you get psyched out and you're next to a guy who's faster than you, now you're not running your race, and then you never get to your top speed
Yeah.
because you didn't, you were concerned with an externality that didn't let you get to your best performance.
Mm.
Carl Lewis used to win the race in the last 20 meters.
Mm.
So there was a certain patience and discipline
And
to to understand that I don't accelerate as fast,
mm.
and I'm not going to worry about that.
Well, I seen Marcel Jacobs was the only sprinter to ever still accelerate within the last 10 meters. Though was the only one who held his top speed in the last 10 meters. Normally they just start to drop off at that point. And he's the one that won the Olympic gold at the last one. He's a different kind of animal. But I want to bring it back to rope flow, because I know me and you could talk about sprinting and athletics, like
Sure.
this stuff all day. But with my practice, once I'd got, like I say, I waxed and waned, and then coming back to it, it's the sneaks and the pivots and the turns that just make it so much fun, because you've got, well, the sneaks just, they make it fluid, right? Because the dragon roll, you kind of, when you're pivoting with a dragon roll, you're kind of fighting that shoulder, whereas with a sneak you can kind of tuck,
Yes.
and you're tucking through around the bends. And so I'm doing the pivots, but then you've also got the where you can go like the same side, but then there's also this counter one, which I see Chris do a lot and that I've took on lately, where you're doing the kind of this rotational stuff. When I was doing with the
Yes.
duck walks, I was doing duck
Yes.
walks like that lately, and it
I
just
saw
feels
that.
cool. And there's just so much scope within, once you can sneak, and it just becomes a second nature thing, and you start to turn and twist. And I guess my point I want to bring you back to is that I think putting music on with it has changed it, because I'm someone who's put out a lot of like aggressive flows on Instagram where I'm like smashing the rope, and I can do that stuff to a degree. I still feel like it pulls me out of my fluidity a little bit. But when I put music on and flow, it's just such a different, I know you use the word frequency when you talked about different weight ropes, and I really like that as a way to define them. But a different frequency in the way, like the emotion which I'm rolling with, and I just have a different enjoyment of the practice. And so I guess I just want to, encourage people just to have those, like David is himself said, he has these seasons, it goes with it organically, it has breaks and then comes back to it. That it, find a good, when you find a new song that you like, just rope with that new good song, something like that. I think that's a good way to practice with it. Is there
Yes.
anything? Is there anything? Any patterns you've seen lately, or anything you've been drilling lately, or you've seen Chris working on lately, or any cues or something that with rope flow that stood out to you in the last few months that you want to share?
Well, let me just describe something before answering that specific question.
Yeah.
A few years back, my mother-in-law passed away, and deaths are different when it's different people. You know, you mourn the loss of everybody, but some of them hit you harder than other ones for whatever reason. And for whatever reason, her death really hit me in the gut. And how I mourned the loss of my mother-in-law was with the underhand alternating sneak. And my logic there was like, if I can always take another step and I have two beats of balance on each step, so I can hit the beat, change, hit beat. If somebody were forcing you to roll the rope for as long as possible and endure, the alternating underhand sneak is the one that I believe I could do the most. Like I could plow the field and keep plowing the field with
Really?
that. And
Wow.
and you know, I also have some more esoteric connection through the work and exploration that I've done, such that like the 4 line in the foot and the 5 line in the foot, like I was very disciplined in finding very specific angles of the shoulder as they relate to the feet. And the underhand sneak is, it naturally brings you to that. And that stems from that one tension diagram where my attempt was to represent three-dimensional space in 2 dimensions, you know, on a graph piece of paper related to the feet and all the angles involved in it. Um, the underhand sneak, underhand alternating sneak. So I have a body weight shift.
Mm.
And one of the patterns, another pattern that I liked a lot throughout the years was a race and chase where I race, change. So it's cross, 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 open. So it's a body weight shift, a body weight shift, a body weight shift, float the last one. Body weight, float, body weight, float.
Mm.
So I found that I could keep the rope going at its fastest speed with the greatest endurance with that strategy. So really what I'm doing is I'm always pulling the rope to me to harness the gravity, and I'm using my entire body weight to do it. And then without, if I just raced and chased, I wouldn't have that one beat of rest within
Recovery.
it,
Yeah.
so that it would be, you know, less it would be less enduring. And if you subscribe to the philosophy that slow is smooth and smooth is fast, now you can really drill into the efficiency that will ultimately yield a faster, if you have the patience to perfect it. Whereas if you get out ahead of yourself and you're just going fast, 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 well, now you're not mining it for the truest efficiency so that the
You tighten
ceiling.
up, right? You can tighten up quite a lot.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct. So the pressure to perform and hit your own standards or the standards of competing with others, you know, that there's a time and a place for it. But if you go back to the efficiency as the foundation and continually hone the efficiency, and I find that the phasic, you know, on again, off again, on again, off again, also facilitates that capacity to let it gestate for a while and really solidify what you accomplished in that last phase. Now you come back to it and you're just approaching from a different level so that you can eke out even more gains in efficiency, which is ultimately how you will get to your top end speed. And what Chris does, Chris Chamberlain, Eroding Weakness on Instagram and the director of programming here at Weck Method, is Chris explores new variations within the patterns to uncover things that I had never discovered. So he'll do different techniques within, like, so he'll have an underhand action and an overhand roll type of thing, and different, you know, beats and patterns where he's discovering something new. And because this is in me, just innate now, I'm able to rapidly replicate what he has now uncovered through that strategy. And that's a lot of fun. So, you know, when you know it, you can see it. And so when I'm teaching somebody, I can tell them when they made the mistake and I can tell them what the mistake was just because I can see it because I felt it.
Yes.
And
I love
so
that.
what,
Yeah.
what I enjoy now is I enjoy those new tidbits of information or consideration. Chris will ask me like, okay, well, I'm doing this, and then I'll be able to look at it, and then oh yeah. So if I do this, I'll clean it up. So we're able to really work well together in the assemblage of new patterns. And one of the things that Isaac, Coiling Titan, he is one of those mathematical, he's so intelligent that his mind is in a different place than most others. So it really is mathematics. It's music is math, and the rope is this musical medley of mathematic precision measured by the calculus, not just the arithmetic of it, because it's the rate of change. And so Isaac came down and he was showing us all these hooks that he was doing with the rope, where he'd have it and he would hook the rope with a finger, and that would lead to sort of a connection of two, but you're still individual with it. And what I did was I was like, okay, well, I'm going to actually create a loop with the rope so I don't even have a frictional component on my finger. And if you set it up and you can boom, 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 you can create a loop that now hooks the rope. And then when I have the loop, I'm able to so I've gotten it, I've looped it, but I'm holding the rope, and the rope is the loop containing the other side. And now I can slide that loop with no friction on my finger. And that was a fun discovery, to be like, Isaac comes down with something, Chris sees it and starts replicating it. I approach it from that different angle to loop it. Chris then loops it and discovered things that I didn't discover. And then Isaac takes the principle and does something that, the complexity of which is just like, whoa, you know what I mean? So I think in the rope flow community, we're all feeding upon the discoveries of others. And I saw something, Asia is really where this has taken off and become a community activity. And they,
The Philippines and Korea. Is Korea like up there, or is it mainly Philippines, right? And then
yes,
what are they?
Philippines is really, a place where the cohesiveness of the community has grown and grown and grown. Malaysia is another place where you have that cohesive community. So we're all going to get together on Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon, and we're going to flow together. And, they really have a sense of community with it.
Beautiful, man.
And then I remember seeing a post, I think it was only a couple of weeks back, where they were demonstrating all these sort of variations on the four patterns, and they've created, if you discover it, you get to name it, kind of a deal.
Yeah.
And one of them was the mullet roll. And for being from New Jersey, where the mullet was created, at least that's the story I know. I'm from New Jersey. I was laughing out loud as I saw that, because here's 15 different moves, and they're all new in the sense that it's a variation that we've not seen before, and one of them was the mullet roll.
I think I saw this one, right? It's the one where you like hold
yes, yes, exactly. And so yeah, I mean, my comment was mullet roll, laughing heart fire. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that others are advancing the art / practice beyond that which when they received it. And I was just speaking with Jared, who athletically, he's superior to me. Like, athletically, you are superior to me. There's nothing that I could do to be as athletic as you, just because God gave us different gifts, and physically he gave you more. Chris is physically superior. Keanu is physically superior. Crazy Train, they're all physically superior to me. So they're able to feel things that which I can't feel, because I'm not athletically at their level. So they can pioneer something that I wouldn't have pioneered. And now I get to learn from them and go to places that I otherwise myself wouldn't have gotten to. And then with the Philippines, just the fact that they're so, like, I don't think they physically do it. I think they do it all the time. And they're able to apply this creativity, not necessarily like athleticism, but just this creativity that, and they feed off one another. So they're creating all these new within the framework because, and any human being given your structure with the attenuation of you have a rope in at the handle on each side, anybody who did that long enough would discover what I discovered. There's 4 fundamental patterns, and they relate to the cardinal directions as they relate to the cardinal directions. And that is the foundation from which creativity can abound. And now you get a new variation on those fundamentals. And the value of doing it with the fundamental strategy of orient around the rope, always doing same thing. So you have a north, south, east, and west, gives you that form, no form capacity to go further than if you didn't calibrate your movement to the cardinal directions. So it's a case where if you have just the discipline that you've defined your north, and we defined the north with the underhand, which is approach that Chris helped me arrive at, because the underhand is the fundamental relate to gait pattern and the overhand is more sort of fight pattern. And, the overhand is a jab and a cross, and the underhand is an uppercut and a hook.
Yeah. I like to, just on that, I like to see them as a underhand is like gifting someone, and the overhand is like taking. So I feel like underhand is a more loving, you're running, you're giving, and then overhand is like fighting and aggressive and taking. So it's just, that was just my thinking.
Right. Yeah. The yin and the yang, the feminine, the masculine, the polarities that is both sides utilized.
Yeah.
And I always appreciate, you have a good soul. Like, you truly have a good soul where, I don't know, for whatever reason, a lot of people, I don't know, if you found, the $5 bill on the ground, you'd walk around asking everyone whose $5 it is, whereas most people are just going to put the there's no wallet, there's nothing. Some people are going to take the money out of the wallet, and some people are going to, just put the $5.
I've still certainly got my issues. I just have a certain North Star that helps. Yeah. But carry on.
Yeah. Right. No, I think you have sort of a karmic, internalization that, probably yields, a greater return, even if it's less immediate. And I think that it's an interesting perspective of the giving. And, I'd never heard it described in those terms, but the root of it is relate to gait.
Yeah.
And then the understanding that gait is not just how fast, how far, how long. It's, can you get there in the face of opposition? So the fight element is important. Jordan Peterson, be dangerous and don't exploit the danger, but don't be weak and compliant by necessity. Be strong and then seek the compliance. It's like, you have a peace sign here and you got a peace sign here. And I don't do this peace sign. I do this peace sign because this is the one where it's like, okay, I want to ensure peacefulness because I trust myself. I'm not going to just beg for peace because that will get trampled if the other party decides to do so. So you have the aspect of flight that is, can you get there in the face of opposition? And can you stay there in the face of opposition that wants to take your place? So I think to have that truest capacity is it is multi-directional. So it's all directions.
Yeah.
And I think that, go back far in our ancestry, I think that, this differentiation of the shoulders such that I can be fighting behind me with the spear whilst moving that way with the greatest efficiency. So I can still go fast on the same side stride whilst I prevent the wild dogs from clipping my Achilles and bringing me to the ground. I think that was ultimately, the greatest value is not just when you're facing the force, but you're able to face a force that is behind you whilst you're covering distance away from the threat. So I always bring it back to that sort of fight, flight, elemental aspect. Because
I remember that very well from meeting you in San Diego, just how much you would relate to like survival and stuff. And I find it absolutely fascinating, like that your take goes so esoteric and almost like biblical in the sense of like time period or before that, how much you relate to like we've got a lot of safety now and we've got a lot of brick walls, but there was a time when people would just sneak up and slit your throat or whatever. And I don't know, I've got definitely different spiritual beliefs on all that now, but I can see that that's a part of human history, what you talk about. And so
Yes, well, I mean, it's interesting. My father and mother met in the Peace Corps, and they were both stationed in Ethiopia. And my mother was in an area where it was, more civilized and more affluent. My father was in the poorest place you could possibly be, you know, living in a mud hut, boiling his water and, suffering the bed bugs. And there'd be thieves that would come and, he'd be under the bed, listening to gunshots and kind of thing. And what he had to do, and anybody had to do in that environment, was you carried a stick and you carried rocks in your pocket, because traversing terrain to get from here to there, you would encounter wild dogs and you would encounter hyenas. And if you didn't have the sticks and stones, well, now they could literally consume you. And what he told me was that the wild dogs were conditioned that even if you didn't have a rock and you just made a throwing motion, they'd scatter, because they had the sense enough to know that, okay, we've experienced that this associates with, getting hit in the head and injured.
yeah.
So, and a hyena, I mean, good grief, you want to, cancel Christmas, go try to walk past a pack of hyenas. But, so he had the actual real life incentive to go way back, as it were, to require a stick and a stone just to literally survive.
Mm.
So I think that those fundamentals for some, I think it's interesting that, he had that experience. And then that's what I always route back to, is those fundamental principles that, and I just use my imagination as well. Sticks, stones, ropes, and ropes was the thing that tied them all together and created more leverage for the sling and the bow and the arrow.
David to beat Goliath.
Yeah, I mean, it was a rope that beat
Yeah.
Goliath.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, fascinating. Um, any final things on rope flow? Shall we? I think we can move along. Um, let's talk about the propulsors then, because I know that's kind of what we want to get to today. But let's start sort of at the beginning with that for you, how that discovery came about, what they do, and
Yeah.
I've kind of explained it a bit, but I would love to hear your take on it.
Yeah. So May 1st, 2010, I love boxing, and that was the date that Floyd Mayweather fought Shane Mosley. And I had been doing a lot of spiraling drills in accord with the acupuncture meridians, where I was, sort of closing the hand while, the pericardium, the King's Castle, that houses the heart, and sort of the large intestine and the triple worm are all congregating to create three triangles, and then enveloping it with the thumb and the pinky as this is the lungs and this is the heart.
Yeah.
And out here's the small intestine. So I had been doing this spiraling drill where I'd, wind them and whip them. And I found that architecture was, most efficient way to envelop the center and move it the fastest that I could possibly do with the least effort. So that was sort of logic. And it, so May 1st, 2010, in the second round, Mosley connected with Mayweather and stunned him. And that was like, is this the moment where the best fighter, the best technical boxer ever, you could say, gets beat, right? And because he was very vulnerable in that moment. And I jumped up, and because my hands had patterned this arrangement so many times, I went to here, and it was like extreme. And later that night is when I sort of closed it down, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the strongest bone architecture that I can possibly arrange to give me the most, the skeletal circuit of these triangles and enveloping it so that it's like, it's not, I don't need hand wraps suddenly, and it's sharper. And I felt that. And as soon as I felt that, it suddenly related to gait, because now I had that circuit where tension is to my advantage, not, tension to my disadvantage in a conventional, grasping position where you need a stick to make that effective. This is not very good, just in terms of the architecture of the skeleton. It will fail at that distal interphalangeal joint, the DIB joint. And so as soon as I had that circuit, I started punching down and I was like, wow, I can create a jolt of force or a pulse of energy that just fluidly, boom, boom, gets me off the ground. And as soon as I did that, Deion Sanders just, oh, this is how Deion Sanders actually runs. It's not swinging one up, one down. There's a jolt that is down, and they both go down, they both come up, they both go down. And so I made that realization in that moment, and that was 2010. And then it took me until 2017 to arrive at the mechanical device that would help teach that and train that. And I had already invented the RMT club that had that aggregate, that, you know, the steel shot that's moving, so it's
So you already
shifting.
had that, like that pulsing action with the,
Yes,
yeah, the yeah, cool. So it was a
right,
development on
right.
that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so that, and I just so happened to be prototyping, you know, and I have all stuff all around. So I had, you know, a Tupperware filled with the aggregate shot. And so I put it into a bottle, and then I felt that because I was experimenting with solid. I had gone to the swap meet, which I do all the time. I found these 2 pound weights that ironically they were blue and they looked like a Bosu ball. So it was this crescent with a handle. And you
Mm.
put your hand in and you had the crescent and the handle, and they're 2 pound weights. And I, you know, pulsed around the swap meet all day. And because it's solid, there's a lot of inertia involved in the change of direction.
Mm.
So you're not able to do it as rapidly, and it puts a big burden on the connective tissue. So I was extremely sore the next day. And so I was like, okay, well, I went to Home Depot and I bought all these different weighted metal objects. So, you know, I bought a carabiner that weighed this much, a steel circle that weighed this much. So I was testing the sweet spot weight with which I could pulse and get the most with the least cost. And, you know, okay, I'm arriving, oh, I'm faster with this weight than I am with that weight. You know, it can be too heavy, it can be too light. And then there's that Goldilocks weight. And that's when it hit me that, oh, wait a minute, I can take the inertia out of the equation if the weight shifts. And so now I can stop it as if the weight isn't there, because the speed of the weight moving puts it at one end, and then the stop, there's no resistance to the stop. And, you know, the weight of the container, which is next to nothing. And that's when it concentrates all of that inertia into an event where you're multiplying that momentum to spike an exponential force
Mm.
that didn't cost me anything to stop. And so that's when the pulsar invention came to be. And I began, you know, I filed a patent. It was the most comprehensive, intense patent that I've ever written, the most expensive patent by a factor of like 5, because I knew that this was such a revolutionary concept that didn't exist, that like, wow, like this can be bigger than the Bosu ball type of feeling, right?
Mm.
And I ideated and conceived of 2 iterations of it in that patent. One was the BBs that move, which is very easy to fabricate. And then the other was a spring action, where you have a weight with a spring. And so what I've gotten to now is I found the correct ratio of weight to spring. And so I've created the sort of version 2 of the propulsor,
It's a
where,
lot smaller, isn't it? Looks quite
well,
a bit
this
smaller.
one's, I can make these different sizes. So
Okay.
this is a smaller one, but I've got this one here that's a little bigger, and I've got one that's bigger, and you can make them any size that you would want.
Mm. Which,
And
like, the Pro Pulse is like a bit longer. It feels like it's like a
yes,
nice, smaller, a better size for the hand.
yes, but I have one that is the equivalent size. So the
Okay.
external dimensions are the same exact
Okay.
size. And that one led to the creation of the Propulse Power Vest. So
Okay.
here,
So let's
here
finish the
they're,
thought on this one though. You just
yeah,
start to share
right,
that. Sorry,
right.
carry on. Yeah.
So what's great about the spring is you even get more concentration of the 0 to 100, because it's a solid mass now that's moving, and you
Mm.
have the delay of the spring that gives you the timing for the mechanism to help you run faster, right? And that timing and delay leads to an accelerant back up. And the ease with which you can educate someone to use this is, what I tell people, just hold them in your hands. Now park your hands next to your hips and don't move your hands, just run over there. And now just your body weight, you're getting this pulsing spring action because you don't need the ratio is such that if I go up, I get the pulse action, which in the other design you don't get. You have to forcefully go down to create the ricochet. This thing happens regardless. So I can come down and up.
It's easier to coach it to people than the
I mean,
other one as well.
A whole order of magnitude easier, such that like just hold them, don't move your hands, and you feel it, and then you feel it, you understand it, and now you just ride it, and you succeed instantly. There's no technique involved, and then you build technique upon that feeling and sensation. You do what you do, it does what it does, and it happens. The magic happens. And so this is super, super exciting, and it was a long process to find the correct ratio of weight to spring. And try going shopping for a spring. Like, it's not like you have spring stores with you go to the hardware store, where are the springs? Okay, they'll take you to a little section with 10 drawers of different springs. So it was years and years before I sort of could take an off the shelf part that got me close enough to what it needs to be to actualize this concept that's already written in the patent, because I had conceived it.
Preempted
right?
it,
Yeah, exactly. So it's patented from the first patent, and I have a second patent. I have a third patent and a fourth patent that are pending. So this thing is very, very protected from an intellectual property standpoint.
I know in America that's a huge thing. Like, I get anything from America and there's the patent pending and all this stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, what it does is it gives the little guy a chance to innovate and achieve the American dream. Because if I didn't have the intellectual property on it, Nike would just come in and take it, and then it's theirs, and then I don't benefit. So where's my incentive to innovate?
It's fair enough that you do it. Yeah, no, do not.
Yeah, I mean, if your reward is proportionate to the value you provide, which is the fundamental, good phase of capitalism, is if I can do something and be creative to invent something that gives another human being a benefit that is in their own interest, regardless of me, well, the fact that I get to enjoy 20 years of proprietary monopoly on that is only the fair exchange. So, if you didn't have that, well, I wouldn't share it with you. And the word patent itself means open. So when you patent something, you are disclosing the secret. And if you didn't have those laws, you would hoard the secret. Like, why am I going to give it to you if you're just going to take it? Right. So it is a very honest and fair exchange, if you can provide value. And the whole trick, as I see it, is if I can create something that another human being wants to do because it is in their own self-interest to do it, I become irrelevant, which is essential for, if you're the guru and you need to be there, well, then it dies with you. But if you can create something where others will do it regardless of you don't matter suddenly, it's the contribution that matters. And that is my objective. Rope flow has really taken on a life of its own, and it's a piece of rope. So I mean, there's nothing proprietary about a piece of rope, and I love the fact that an invention that I created with this just commodity, a piece of rope, there's businesses all over the world selling ropes, and there's enough room for a lot of different entities or organizations or people to do that. And now they're working in their own self-interest to propagate something that gives them some financial return, which allows them to continue doing it. And I'm not here trying to hoard it. It's mine. No, give it away. And that's what creates them. It's like open source code versus a proprietary code.
I like that open, and that's what Ben Patrick talks about as well, is this open source, like give everything out. And I do wonder on that note, like how many people that do rope flow now, maybe, I've heard of you, and maybe it's 50%, maybe it's 20%, but give it 5 years and it might be 10 or 5% of people that do it will actually know where it came, because it'll be so massive and it'll just be a thing that people don't really look into the history or whatever. But that's really kind of beautiful. The way
Well, one of the things that really works in my favor and takes this open source approach that ultimately, in the short term, it's not a reward for me, but
Mm.
I think in the long term, it is a reward for me because, as far as I understand, there's only really one bad apple in the entire rope flow community that I'm aware of that doesn't cite the source and that, markets it as his own invention. Oh, I was training ropes with my clients. They were getting all these results and I saw that it didn't exist. And this
Mm.
person literally plagiarized we taught him within the online movement university. And then he basically, took that short-sighted approach, which is, I'll just change the name, blah, blah, blah. So the advantage that I have is most people are in the rope flow community for what I'll call the right reasons, and they want to share, and they can sell ropes, so they're still benefiting from it, but the language. So the fact that there is a drag and roll and a sneak, and the greater proportion of the rope flow community has adopted that language. So now there will always be a route back to source in the sense that it is a drag and roll. It's Coca-Cola. It's not RC. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so I think, and the fact that I'm not a one-trick pony where I have a lot of other things that are proprietary, rope flow is a goodwill gesture that, from a karmic standpoint, will yield to me so much benefit, so many exponential orders above if I were like hoarding it.
Yeah, you're
That
not insecure that it's your only thing that you've done, that you've got to hold on to it. It's like
correct.
you're confident in yourself, you're inventing other things, and it's like, here's a gift, it's great.
Yes,
Um,
yes,
can we? I just want to, because I don't want to go. I want to keep it fairly concise. Let's just
yeah.
talk briefly about the biomechanics a bit more with the propulsors, because I think that's fascinating. I'd love for people to understand more what's happening. I'll share my
Okay.
take on it, and then you can tell me if I hit or
Yeah.
miss, or what correct any bits. One thing that I see, because you talk about connective tissue recoil, and I think it's really important for people to understand what that means, because I think you can work it out, but some people might not be sure when they hear connective tissue recoil. And it's this, for me, it's like you've got the Achilles, which is what is the biggest, the thickest, or the biggest ligament in the body, right? Running around the back. Tendon, sorry,
Tendon.
correct me there.
Yep.
Right, and so you've got this downwards force is loading, you're using gravity and your own force rather than this swing.
Yes.
And you're loading that tendon with weight, and then it's releasing like an elastic band to spring you forward, right? So is that one of the key principles with how the pulses work?
Yes. What I'm always seeking is greatest economy, and muscular fiber that contracts and elongates. There's a metabolic cost to that.
Yes.
Whereas the tendon can't contract on itself, so the tendon has to be reactive to a muscular contraction or a force, where it's a lot less shortening and lengthening. So the tendon will essentially lengthen without lengthening, so that it's a exponentially higher force and power, because power is dependent upon the rate of time involved in the exchange. So in order to create the most economy, if you look at a gazelle or a deer, what they're doing is they're landing, and it's this boing, 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 so that the muscle is not elongating and contracting. The muscle becomes a fluid belly contained within this fascial envelope, where it's fluid, and the fastest way through fluid is without restriction. So the connective tissue is really what's being, it's surrounding the fluid medium, and the force goes through the fluid medium with the fascial engagement to create the greatest economic exchange of the gait cycle. And if you watch someone who jogs just slowly, what you'll see is that their hands actually bounce when they jog. So they're not swinging their arms like this. They are actually bouncing, and that weight and all the tendons and fascia that integrates that are now creating a jolt of force with that fluid fascial flow to the floor. If it's unencumbered by tension, that creates a more economical, enjoyable, and less cost in terms of the metabolic cost and the tissue trauma cost So you win in every single regard the more you can harness this connective tissue recoil. And the ubiquitous connective tissue is called fascia. And there's essentially 4 layers of fascia, meaning, it's right underneath the skin, so it envelops everything. And then it surrounds the muscle itself. And then it surrounds every spindle of muscles. And then it surrounds every cell with the actin and myosin. So it's like at every level from, from the outside to the inside, everything is surrounded and supported by the fascia. So that's the truest continuity. And the fascial tissue is where most of the nervous system resides in terms of your proprioception and your awareness of where you are in space. It's not in the muscle belly, it's more in the fascial envelopment. So it's a highly more educated tissue that really is nervous system. And I like to think of the entire body as just a root system of the brain. And everything else is serving the brain. So you're like this jellyfish where, the dangles and stuff is all brain that's feeding information and executing the task at hand that the brain wants to accomplish. So, at every level, if you drill it down, it just makes sense. And economy is your greatest chance to optimize any system, whether it's mechanical or biomechanical. It's the balance, the coordination, and the economy that defines the upward limit of what the output can be. Because if there's a compensatory adjustment for inefficiency, that's a protective tension. It's not a productive tension. So the pulsars just amplify the arm action that now creates a faster, more powerful jolt of force where, especially going uphill, you can go faster with it than without it because the burden of carrying it is less than the return you get from it, from that connective tissue recoil. Whereas if it were muscular, a solid object, there's the inertia and the tissue trauma and the restriction of that inertia. And so what we're doing essentially is we're gaming the physics of it by putting in this phasic, 0, 100, 0, 100, 0, 100, 0, 100. And the force calculations that I've experimented with to the best of my ability, the transformation of 12 ounces in the, in the BB pulsars, it's 12 ounces, and then a powerful thrust will spike above 40 pounds. But the time at 40 pounds is measured in the thousandths of a second. So if you were to take 1,000 reps, that's only 1 second of tension. So, you know what I mean? So
man, where physics meets biomechanics is so beautiful, and it's so niche because no one, the scientists and the athletes aren't in communication, and you are that rare unicorn that bridges the gap, that is experimenting and creating, and it's just beautiful. So thanks for sharing that. I don't know if you've got any final points, but that was lovely, and I hope people were able to understand some of that. And I think the fascia, that's quite complicated, and hopefully that's some people were able to get something from that.
Yeah, well, I think where this is going to also be transformative is that when we put the bigger cartridges on a vest, now
tell us about the vest. Yeah.
So basically, the way that physics works is you yourself, the proximal mass of your body, cannot go down faster than gravity will take you down. So the fastest way that you can move your proximal mass is to release. So when Barry Sanders puts a juke on, he's releasing and lifting. So his feet lift up as he drops at the speed of gravity so that he gets a spike. And the distal extremities, the hands and the feet, can move faster than gravity. So the hands, boom, I can go a lot faster than gravity with the hands. And someone performing a weightlifting snatch, they get that upward, and now they can drop under faster because they're pulling themselves down with the distal extremities. So they're able to drop faster than you are able to drop just with your own body's weight.
Hmm.
Now, because of the spring-loaded potential of this, your proximal mass, this works, and it's faster than gravity without you having to do anything. So when you put it on your body, there is literally zero learning curve, because just your mass moving up and down engages the spring and the jolt. So now we have this plyometric effect where, let's say the vest is 10 pounds. That 10 pounds now is hitting down, unlike a solid mass that contains the inertia. So for the microsecond, there is no load essentially, and then it spikes, but then it springs up. So what you have is you have this plyometric effect where we're increasing the force and reducing the time and covering the same distance. So now the power equals the force divided by the time multiplied by the distance. So the smaller the time, the more powerful the movement. Strong doesn't require the time factor.
Yeah.
Power is defined by the time factor. And so, but we still want to maximize force. And this is why elite sprinters will generally not wear a weighted vest, because the burden of that vest and the cost to the time can actually upset their mechanics, so that now they're spending more time on the ground, and their objective is to spend less time on the ground. So the vest will make you stronger, maybe better condition, but it will not make you faster.
A
And it'll
weighted vest.
actually,
A weighted vest will do that.
yes, sorry, yes, the weighted
Okay.
vest. So the weighted vest actually, from a sprint component, from a sprint objective, the weighted vest becomes it creates a negative training response.
Yeah.
Now suddenly you do what you do, it does what it does, and you're getting a new plyometric stimulus that is productive and makes you faster. And
And how much did you
and
say? What you said, it weighs barely anything, right? The vest.
well, 10 pounds.
Yeah.
10 pounds. I think fully loaded, I have to get, like, I'm more the weights of these are more going upon the weight and the ratio. So I'm not like I'm making an 8 ounce. I'm saying,
Yeah.
okay, this much weight and this much spring, we'll dial it in later,
Yeah.
when we have more resources. But,
Yeah.
I'm commissioning the fabrication of springs with a plus or minus 5% tolerance, where I just ordered 10,000 springs, for example, that turned out in our prototyping of them to be even better than the off the shelf one that I was able to purchase.
Okay.
So, and at less cost, because it's now a custom order at volume.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to win.
Can I?
And
Sorry.
last thing is,
Yeah.
I have now the eyes, the ears, and the minds of some of the best sprinters in history, and the most knowledgeable sprinters and coaches in history now believe me, because I've been able to demonstrate to Otto Bolden, who is the voice of speed. Joe Rogan's the voice of MMA, and Otto Bolden is the voice of speed and sprints. And in order to announce and be the best announcer, you have to know as much as you can know. Like, oh, that person pulled their hamstring back in March, and so, we'll see how they perform in this race. And, Otto Bolden was able to predict Usain Bolt's world record 200 within 1/100th of a second. So he ran a 19:19, and Otto had predicted, I think, a 19:20. So you want to talk about someone who knows his craft. And he himself, I think his fastest time was like a 9:87. So he's in the Hall of Fame
Yeah.
in terms of his
I remember that.
accomplishment.
Yeah.
But he also has a brain that is of the highest level. And when you have the brains and the brawn, you now have a confidence that those who have only either one of them will tend not to have. Well, they'll be much more guarded, and no, what my coach said is right. You
Yeah.
can't be right.
I know what you mean.
Whereas Otto had the wherewithal to recognize, like, oh my gosh, yes, this is special. So I have those guys now who I'm about ready to dispatch the vests to them. And so now that's like plugging in, and in athletics, true advantage equals necessity. And so Like Elon Musk has his master plan for Tesla, I have my master plan for Weck Method that, it's taken me a long time to execute because it's not done with money. It's done with sort of organic growth and using the resources to
Yeah.
reinvest.
And I
But
think when
it's,
things are so organic as this is, it takes people don't buy because it's not flashy cars and it's not bigger muscles and it's not juicier shakes or something like that. It's so like people. I think people have got more of a side eye to something that comes in like this, where they associate with snake oil or something like that, and because organic can get thrown in with that stuff, and sometimes it is hard to discern that it's going to take that real undercurrent to carry it through, right? And that's
well, yes, it's the results that rule. So,
yeah,
and the best example athletically of an innovation that is so obvious in why it's an innovation in hindsight that was literally dismissed and ridiculed and rejected by the experts of that time is the high jump.
mm.
And 1968, Dick Fosbury popularized this new.
R.I.P. He died this year, I think.
Yes, correct. And he demonstrated at the highest stage on earth, the Olympics, set the Olympic record and won the gold medal. He's not the best athlete. He's the guy doing the superior technique, and nobody else was.
Yeah.
And, if I have an advantage in technique that supersedes your athleticism above me, well, then I beat you and I'm a lesser athlete. Now, 4 years later, the Olympic gold was won with a lesser jump than Fosbury, better athlete, lesser jump, gold medal, doing the old technique 4 years
They
after
still hadn't
it was.
adopted it. They still hadn't adopted it.
No, it was completely rejected, ridiculed in all those sort of phases of new truth, right?
Mm.
First it's,
Yeah.
first it's ridiculed, then vehemently opposed, and then accepted as obvious all along. Rewrite history. Oh yeah, I knew that. So that's the
Oh,
sort of the
man.
human nature aspect of it.
Yeah.
And who am I, right?
Yeah. Well, can I
Like,
just dig in? So, and I don't want to keep cutting, but I just want to keep the
yeah,
flow going with this.
absolutely. Yeah,
Just to, just
sure
to
thing.
just to double down and ask questions on the on the vest. You're saying it hits with a jolt of speed that's faster than we could get naturally. That then loads the tendon down the connective tissues, the fascia, the Achilles. That then, like loading an elastic band and releasing it, we've got this it's faster and more
Yes.
explosive. And that teaches that into the body. Then how come when you run without the vest, does that carry on? What do we get from that? So the
So
body learns
basic.
the technique, or it loads the tendons, or what's the?
Well, the wonderful thing is it's both. So neurologically, it's a lot easier to get there when you've been there. So if I'm getting a stimulus that's loading more force without compromising how much time it takes me to do that force, I'm
Mhm.
getting a mechanical training effect that my tissues were now loaded with greater force. So I'm getting the development of managing more force, and I'm getting used to the body dealing with greater force, but without sacrificing the time. So there is literally a training response. Like if I lift the weight, it makes me bigger, kind of a thing, right? I do this, it makes me more powerful. Now, it doesn't compromise the technique because the spring action back up and the time on ground being so small. So now I can achieve top end mechanics that are actually enhanced with the vest. So the neural patterning and the execution, the engrams involved in sprinting are not being compromised, they're being augmented. So I'm getting a learning effect of rehearsing what it is I want to do from an engram, brain body coordination, but I'm also getting the tissue development of that plyometric that is not removed from the technique. So to date, if a sprinter wants to do a plyometric, in excess of what they're doing sprinting, you have to now do a different pattern to elicit a training response of the tissues and then reprogram it back into the pattern.
Yeah, and hope
So it's,
there's bleed over from that
yeah,
training to the actual
the carry.
application. Yeah, carry
Yes,
it.
and yes, and there is carryover, but it's not a direct one for one
Yeah,
carryover.
totally. Yeah.
And so now we're getting a one for one carryover. And like I'm my own guinea pig, and I'm a B plus athlete who can discern what is true and what is not.
Mm.
So I wear the vest pretty much all day, and I am jumping higher, and I'm running faster. So it's like, okay, well, it's working for me, it's working for others. And I had Justin Kavanaugh, Coach Cav, on Instagram, who I've recently met. And I love people who are smarter than me and more experienced than me in aspects where just being in their presence and learning from them ratchets up my intelligence and understanding of something. And he knows things and has experience in areas where I do not. So I'm able to like, wow. And so that person I have the ultimate respect for, because again, that person tends to have more confidence and less blowhard. You know, I'm a hater because deep down I'm insecure. So he's secure in himself, so he doesn't hate me for my success. And so that's, you know, it's a win-win. And he was here in San Diego coaching the Paralympic events where he had some athletes who win gold medals, and he was able to come by the lab, and I put the vest on him, and he's running with it. He just kept on saying, "This is fascinating." Like he runs over there and he's like, "This is fascinating." He runs back, "This is fascinating." Then he starts doing like linebacker movements and like, you know, he's like, "This is fascinating." So, and he's like, it's self-regulating because whether my frequency is, you know, 2 or 3 beats per second or 5 beats per second, it doesn't matter. You can't outrun the spring. Yeah. So if you're jogging at, you know, slow, it's still doing it. And if you're going at full on sprint speed, your body weight and you're always going to have the synchronization. It's 100% synchronized with a precise delay component in there of the spring that makes it time perfect. And so, like, I was very fortunate to make this discovery. But again, I'm not a product guy. Like the pulsars came from that organic process where I myself was the tool that I learned how to arrange the skeleton into a structure that gave me a new capacity that I was not taught and no one was teaching, because it just, you know, the incentive to innovate with just your body weight, first of all, you can't protect it. So anybody, you know, you do a technique, someone else could do the technique. There's nothing to patent, right? So, okay, Fosbury Flop, he never made a dime because, okay, there's no law saying that that's something that you can monopolize. It's just monkey see, monkey do. And if it's better, I'll do it. It's my own interest. So that, just the purity and the essence of that, and that's rope flow. Essentially, you know, you see a guy doing a rope, you're like, okay, I can do that too. I don't got to pay him, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So this came from, like, the study of biomechanics is extremely sophisticated in things like golf and things like bicycle riding, for example. So Lance Armstrong and all the fast bicycle riders, there is a ton of money that goes into, you know, taking 4 ounces out of the bike with this new titanium part or whatever that costs, you know, it costs another $10,000 to take the next 4 ounces out.
Well, they do the disc brake versus the rim brake is like a huge debate as well.
Yeah, right. And yes, and you have, you know, what kind of helmet and suit are we going to use? Well, we have to construct a wind tunnel now, right? And we need all these sensors and stuff. There's millions of dollars of research that goes into making a better bike rider. And golf clubs, there's a huge market for golf clubs, and they want to sell the guy who can't hit it 250 yards to you know, I can sell him this thing for $600, and now he can. So there's a lot of money involved in it, and so there's advanced, sophisticated science being applied to it. Now, running, like, where's the money? Track spikes. I mean, go to a local retailer
Nike
and
shoes. Yeah.
Well, but Nike shoes were designed to cushion and comfort dysfunction.
But the marketing is, you know, and they sell the new shoes with the massive the springs in them, and the carbon fiber plates now is the thing.
Well, but even that, there's not a market for it, because how many people wear carbon fiber track spikes that give you a legitimate advantage? I mean, you know, you're talking about a few thousand. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
Yeah.
So there's not a market. And if there's no money in it, well, then it doesn't attract the best brain power with the most intensity and focus. It's just, there's not a return on the investment. So how can I even do it? Right. So So with biomechanics, because it's just my thing and I love it so much, and my athletic inadequacy is my motivation. If I do the same things as someone who's better than me, I'm going to lose. There's no opportunity. So I have to be smarter to figure out a new advantage that if I were competitive, I would hoard the advantage until I was done competing. But because I can't compete, there's no incentive for me to hoard it, because I can't be on the stage holding up a gold medal with a world record. It'll never happen. But if I can help them do it better, well, then I win in even a bigger sense. And so that's, to the fact that nobody understood head over foot, and like nobody understood and distilled it down to the simplicity of, I have to be balanced to deliver and receive the maximum force possible. That is clean and nutritive for the body. When the body moves with resonance of productivity and it's not encumbered by productivity and tension that is aberrant because it's not contributing, well, then that's bad medicine for the body. People say movement is medicine. Well, it's toxic medicine.
Depends on the movement. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. People say, oh, there's no such thing as bad exercise. That is a cop-out and a wrong statement. Because I'll invent an exercise right now that's bad. I'm going to hit myself in the head 10,000 times. That's not a good exercise. I'm going to do hammer curls with a hammer and hammer my head. That's a bad exercise, right? So there's a lot of idealism and false bravado when it comes. Oh, there's no such thing as a bad exercise. Yes, there is. Just get over it. You know what I mean? Because that's your way of insulating yourself from the fact that you're not doing the best exercises. You're just justifying your own inadequacy.
We don't need to get on that with debate.
No, but I'm just saying.
No, I know. Yeah. I mean, of course, there's bad exercise. I think the positions in another discussion, because I think depends what you're trying to achieve. Because bad positions, obviously, you can do bad exercises in bad positions, but I think full range of motion. Because then we get into debates about coming off the big toe and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, but yeah, no.
Well, and my whole point with that is not to say bad exercise is good exercise. My whole point is
that there are more optimum exercises.
Well, yes, exactly. Well, and my whole point is that the biomechanics of locomotion was not thoroughly studied because it's so basic. Oh, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about walking. Really? Like, what's there to say? Let's move on. You want to watch paint dry? You know what I mean?
But people do study it, but maybe not enough with enough funding to really get to the nitty gritty of it.
Well, and also but also you tend to have the coach and you have the athlete, and so it's very rare that you have the coach / athlete. And sports like parkour, you're your own coach.
Yeah.
You didn't go to a coach. I mean, maybe now you do, but in the beginning you didn't. Skateboarders, you didn't have a coach. You saw some guy do a trick, you did it yourself, and you innovated on that by doing it. So and once you get to a high enough level, there's certain aspects where nobody else can tell you what's going to make you better.
Yeah.
Because you're on the cutting edge now through the doing. So it always has to come back to the doing, because that's the reality. And the theoretical can't sense and feel the reality, so you can't complete the circuit if you're only in the realm of theory.
Yeah, that's what I was saying before, between the athletes and the scientists, are not on the same page and communicating, and that's where you are both essentially playing both sides.
Yeah, let's put it this way: I'm smarter than I am athletic, but I am athletic enough that I can sense what is true or what is not true. So I'm above the threshold athletically that I can be a truth test for myself to know whether this is worth pursuing further or not. Okay, so that's my athleticism, and my brain power is very high. So, which would you rather have? I'd rather have a brain that's smart than a body that's good, personally. And maybe I'm just justifying what God gave me.
I think everyone can have both. There's a lot of belief systems come into factors and all sorts. But yeah. Great, man. No, I love this, and I've had it on YouTube. This is the first time I experimented with doing it on YouTube Live, and it seems like people in the chat are liking it as well. I've just had a quick look over there. Someone, Rebs, said, just want to thank David. The Bosu ball is a permanent part of my self-care for over a decade. That was a nice little.
Yeah, I mean that is the heartwarming things. I remember when I first started out the Bosu ball, and I had my own office, and I hadn't licensed it, and I was prepared to go that route. So that gave me an advantageous negotiating position to then license it on favorable terms because I wasn't dependent upon it, but I made that decision to, in a sense, purchase my time so I could study. And I remember I'm sitting in my office and I get a phone call from one of the customers who said that she had 3 children, all on the autistic spectrum, and one of them was like severe. And she purchased the Bosu ball because at therapy, the child engaged with that Bosu ball for like 40 minutes, and this kid had never given anything more than 30 seconds. And, she's in tears, I'm in tears. There are tears of joy because this child at such a disadvantage suddenly had a leg up to, to do better than they otherwise would have done. So, like, I mean, I remember that day literally like it was yesterday, just from a fulfillment standpoint.
That's beautiful. And actually, that is one thing I wanted to touch on. And let's just touch on that briefly. And that is the deepening realization of what balance training actually does and how overlooked that is, because we discussed it, but it's like, when you get those deeper aha moments and it like sinks in, and it's with the rope flow, you've got the right sides with the left brain and the left sides with the right brain, and you cross in the midline. But when you're balancing, I just realized how, and you obviously know this, you can't not have the left and right side both involved in a balance challenge. And then, yeah, it's just the way that's engaging the brain as well. And I think we kind of touched on it, but it was just the deeper realization of balancing improves the brain, like the neuroplasticity of the brain, the corpus callosum gets active, whatever, something goes on when we play with our balance. And we find, as you coined it to me, the Goldilocks zone, where it's not too easy and it's not too hard. You find that, and that has to be progressively. My mistake was not progressing it. I mastered something and I didn't make the challenge slightly harder, so I got bored. So it's like, if you constantly have a challenge that can be balance, or it can be juggling or rope flow, that you find the right difficulty in, you can constantly activate the brain and improve, neuroplasticity, its ability to learn, to receive, to memorize information, to study, to write whatever you write in blogs, write a book, whatever it is. When you daily do some sort of balance challenge and go about your day, there is something that happens from the balance that's deeply integrates the brain. I don't know if you want to speak on that a bit, but I just had
I'd love to.
When I spoke, that was like a deeper, like children want to balance. Adults are scared of balance because they're either good at it and that's their whole hobby, and that's a few people, or the rest of human adults feel like I'm not good, so they don't ever touch it. And we need to let go of that and actually play with balance most days, right?
Yes. Well, both sides utilized is my fundamental philosophy. So it's about polarity. It's about, if you're fast, slow, hard, soft, up, down, right, left. So it's optimizing the polarities to give you the maximum capacity between them. Now, balance training, both sides utilized, is in the understanding that you have the controlling chaos side of balance, and that's what people tend to think of as balance, like, wobbling, where there's writing and adjusting, and it's chaotic and it's unpredictable, and it's your ability to not over adjust to the stimulus, that like you don't lose your balance on the first. You had a stimulus that you tried to correct for and you overcorrected, and that's you lost the balance, right? It wasn't the first one. It was the failure of yourself to not do too much to correct the problem. And that's the controlling chaos, where the Goldilocks spot is, finding the appropriate level of difficulty that you can overcome, but it is challenging. So that harmonizes and creates a global harmony. Now, the other aspect of balance training is the harmonization. It is the perfection, where you're patterning protection with a alternating bilateral rotational movement that you can grease the groove of the perfect transfer of weight. And that is actually a more valuable foundation for balance training, is the flow and continuity of organized movement. And that inherently will make you better at the second one, which is the controlling of chaos. So you're very rarely going to slip on the banana peel, but if you walk with the perfect balance, well, then suddenly that event of slipping on the banana peel, you're instantly better prepared to deal with that without overreacting. You'll be seeking solution deep in the nervous system as opposed to resorting to protection at the, in that moment, that you don't have time to think. Now, in the beginning with the Bosu ball, I was working with a professor named Deborah Cruz at Arizona State University. And she was a coach in the LPGA, the ladies PGA golf. And what she was doing was she was putting on a brainwave monitor. So picture a spaghetti strainer with all these little nodes and wires that you can't test some activity that involves you running around, but you can test shooting a free throw with a basketball. You can test putting a golf ball. You can test throwing darts. And what she found was that chaotic, controlling the chaos, if you find the Goldilocks, it will resonate harmony throughout the brain. So she would, and her, you froze. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. It looked like it froze.
I was
So,
just zoning.
no, but the
With you.
image even looked, but so what she discovered was that finding that appropriate balance challenge in the chaos would create a global harmonization to create a zone-like state, the flow state, where she was measurably and consistently able to prove that when your brain on the monitor was harmonious, you shot better free throws. You made 8 out of 10, you didn't make 6 out of 10. Golf putting, you had a higher percentage of success when the brain was resonant like that.
Mm.
Let's say you're concerned about the result and you're not focused on the moment. You have the left brain noise and the right brain is now contracted and diminished. You perform worse. You have the yips in golf. Like you're not performing. So she was able to prove that. And the Bosu ball was very convenient to find and dial in a level of challenge that's appropriate for virtually anyone, because the risk to failure is essentially non-existent. Just get your foot to the floor. So and vestibular perturbation and visual perturbation is a way that you could ratchet the challenge up and
Yeah.
dial it in specifically to you
Find
in this
find
moment.
regressions and progressions, like easy
Yes,
to vary
right,
the variables there
right.
are
And
great.
and and the Bosu ball, you were able to fine tune these things so that anybody could find their level of challenge that they could overcome. So you find your Goldilocks. And that was sort of, both sides up, the Bosu ball. But then the rope flow and staff flow, like, that is another form of it. But the rope is more fluid and more productive, less cost for failure, et cetera, more ensuring success. That is the both sides utilized organization and harmony of the body, where mechanically, biomechanically, the motor and sensory cortices in each hemisphere that relate to the hands on opposite sides. Now, the mechanical action of traveling the hands in these coherent spirals that are communicating with each other in real time resonates harmony within those central big parts of the brain. The hands represent a huge portion of that real estate, so
Mhm.
that you can literally ramp yourself up into the zone. And what I would do back in the day was, after I had had a very challenging, depleting day before, where I don't feel like exercising today, like, wow, I'm exhausted, I'm sore, what I would do is I would take the rope and I would go slow. And I would go slow, gradually build it and crescendo it up. And in 3 or 4 minutes, it was like I was a new person ready to go again today, because I was able to, no matter the level of exhaustion, I didn't have to exhaust myself to get the flow. Where if I'm jumping the rope, there is an entry level point where if I don't feel like it, I can't get on the train and feel like it, because there's burden in just doing the activity. Now,
Yeah, like
it's not to
skipping or
say,
something.
it's not to say, yeah, and this is not to poo-poo jumping rope. I'm an
Mm.
advocate of jumping rope. But if I had to pick only one, I would pick the rope flow because it is on beat, everything down, everything up, everything rotating every rep. Whereas jumping rope is more of a syncopated beat where hands go down, feet go up. They're both useful, but I believe the foundation is on beat to have a stronger syncopation where you're dividing the beat. And
Yeah.
athletically, the shifting of weight is the priority because that
Agreed.
is movement, is shifting weight. And when you discover that you can move without moving, so I can potentiate being on this side or that side on the same base of support without upsetting the relationship of center of mass over base, now that becomes invaluable. And the rope, literally, you wouldn't have to know a thing. If the rope is true, so are you. So it takes the thinking entirely out of it, and it's all about the doing. And the proof is in the pudding. Is the rope fluid? Okay, well, then you're fluid. And now you can go wireless and you have the muscle memory of fluid. So it is the Rosetta Stone of modalities. And isn't it interesting that you, Tim Sheaf, world class, world champion parkour, doing things that most human beings can just ooh and ah, they will never even be able to approach, took such an affinity to the rope as probably your favorite modality, right?
Oh, I love it.
So
I'm blown away, man, and it just my relationship with it just deepens and deepens, and when I see other people that get it, and you can see that look in their eye when they're like they get it, like there's something so magical about it, but it takes some time, like it takes those 30 days to get it, right? Or I mean, you can take. It took me a
yeah,
day to get it, but like the to
yeah.
intellectually get it, but to physically and emotionally get it, it took that 30 days.
Yeah, there's an onboarding process, and the more people who do it, what there is there's a ethereal hundred
Mm.
monkeys effect where
Tipping point,
if millions
whatever.
of
Yeah.
if millions of people are doing it successfully, you now have permission to do it and assimilate it faster because you've witnessed the success. Like I was attempting to do a muscle up with my brother who is 10 years my junior, and I couldn't do the muscle up. This is back in, I don't know, 1996 or something like that. My younger brother, he does it successfully, and instantly I did three in a row. The
Yeah.
governor was lifted. That's my younger brother. Wait a minute. Oh, he can do it. I can do it. Right.
Mm.
Whereas if he didn't do it, neither one of us would have done it. You see what I mean?
I
So,
know exactly what you
so
mean. I noticed it in breakdancing. Certain crews would have a breakdancer that could do air flares or a move, and other members would learn that move. And if one crew didn't have one member, then the other members in that crew wouldn't have that move. And it was some sort of what's it called, like the rub or something. From being around it, you would also get it as well.
yeah, there's an osmotic effect. And if you think about like
That's
the
the way to put it.
Red Bull, if you think about the Red Bull athlete who's doing something that is I'm jumping over a building on a motorcycle doing three flips and I let go of the bike and then I get it and I land. I mean, when I was a kid, skateboarding down a hill was like advanced. You know what I mean? Like there was nobody even on earth who contemplated doing, 10 flips on a motorcycle. But once you see it being done,
Mm.
suddenly the mirror neurons are experiencing it vicariously and it's now possible. So
Mm.
you've released whatever self-limiting beliefs were imposed upon you. So,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
The only thing with rope flow is I'd say is there's something there's an automatic judgment because it's not as we're used to, like, bigger boobs or more bigger chocolate shakes or something like that. It's not as eye catching in the sense that, oh, I want to muscle up, I want to do a human flag, I want to do a one arm handstand. It's a much more, I don't know if humble is the word, but it's more of a subtle thing that's going on that people judge it. They either think it's like poi and it's like a performance piece, or it's like a martial weapon, or it's like you can't skip it, or there's a certain judgment people have because doesn't appeal to their ego of like, oh, I want to be able to do that as much. Like certain
Right.
people maybe get it,
Yes.
but it's
Right.
it's
Well,
it's a, it's, it's a
well, I
deeper
think that
thing.
I think, it's not a feat of strength. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, a
yeah,
feat of strength is very easy to measure, hence the sagittalitis of, measuring your strength with weights. Because, if I'm going to rotate, I'm going to throw a discus way over there. That's not exercise, that's an event. But, if I define the exercises, I got to throw the ball up to that line as many times as I can. Well, it's simple to measure, and it's an exercise. So, the CrossFitter, you wait till rope flow envelops and comes within CrossFit, and suddenly sagittalitis is cured. I mean, these people are going to be such monster athletes, it's going to be ridiculous, because they're already so athletic and so tenacious, but they haven't learned how to put it together to shift their weight. So as soon as and the wonderful thing about it is pick a pattern, pick a pace, and compete for time,
oh
or
yeah, double
define
double dragons. I'd love to see double dragons
yes.
along
Well,
with double unders or something, you know.
well, Edward Troyes, I mean, you find me a person on a planet who can do more switches than Edward Troyes. I mean, I haven't seen it, and I can't do what he does. I feel like I'm glued to the ground compared to him. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and I can game it too. Like, I can game it where I only weight 1 foot and I can go faster than if I weight 2. But Edward, for whatever reason, God's gifts, etc., and his own technique, he's able to do that at a world-class level. He has done 300 beats per minute of a switch,
Is that what he's hit?
which
Yeah.
is like it's like 600 because there's 2 reps on each side. I mean, it's just unbelievable,
Wow.
right? And what he's doing, he's just pulling the rest of us along. Everybody
Yeah.
gets better because he's doing so well.
Yeah. Cool, man. I want to wrap it because I don't want to let these drag, and I reckon we
Yeah.
could have a great discussion about
Yep.
the Weck steps, the soul steps on another one, and the soul deck as
Yeah.
well.
Sure.
But I'm
Yep.
glad we talked about rope, we talked about pulses, and we talked about the vest. The talk about balance to finish as well. I just want to add, just because this is my channel, and I've not and I really aren't that good with plugging my stuff, but I just released a Swiss ball course that I created off of an inspirational chat with David, and I played with the Swiss ball. And it's called Stable. You can access it for free. It's on wheretherope.com. There's a suggested price. It's pay. I'm trying to do pay what you feel, so you can get it for free if you want, and if it serves you and you earn a decent income, you want to contribute, or if you want to pay the suggested price off the bat, make a donation to me. But you can access my Swiss ball course for free. I tested it in the School of Biomechanics and got great results for the people in there. I've got great results myself with it. So I just wanted to let people know about that. One question I had just to finish was from a guy, Dylan, in the School of Biomechanics. I said, I'm speaking to David, do you have any questions? And he said, ask him the best exercises for carrying over strength and also on creating fluidity. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up.
Coiling core.
Coiling core. So to
Without
get the best of both
without
worlds.
question.
Yeah.
Yes, without question, to differentiate, to create the fundamental positions of length and strength, poise to pounce. That's how you activate the entirety of the lat on one side, and the full length contributes to the capacity to achieve the strongest position on the other side, strongest spring coil. And you get the other side, you will catch everything in between to a greater extent. And when you go to do something bilaterally, you have gone so far deeper unilaterally than you could ever even achieve bilaterally. So your strength and your numbers will go up when you understand and practice coiling core training. And
Right.
you can go to Weck Method, and
with a band, would you say?
yeah,
Yeah.
like anybody listening, go to weckmethod.com. We have a free course. We want to give it away because
Yep.
an educated customer is a better customer, right? So if you do the elastic course, you're going to go right into coiling. It'll be the very first thing you do. And you have that limit force elastic. And frankly, you don't even need the elastic to do coiling exercise. But if you get a foundation of that inside your body, it will serve all things. The ultimate reason is because it relates to gait to the fullest extent of polarities. And it's the position and the position. You have destinations of strength. So now the transition lands in boom, that's maximized. Boom, that's maximized. So there's never a moment when you aren't maximized, because you're either traveling from maximum to maximum or you're at maximum. So that's what I would say. Without question, it's an easy question to answer.
Coiling core. Great. I think that's great to finish on, because that's another one of your, I guess it ties in with everything, but part of the discovery with the rope flow, with this, the verticalization and the rotation and the 3D movement training, like coiling core is integral and foundational to all of that stuff. And we've not really talked too much even about that. So that's a great,
Well,
great
and what's nice about it is rope flow gives you the coil expression. If you just literally take your hands and do that, you're coiling. So,
yeah.
you know, there's microcosmic, macrocosmic. So, and what the rope does is the rope has the continuity of the coil. So now it's that calculus arrangement of the
Transition.
shift.
Yeah.
So the transition, you never fall out of that tune, right? It's a melody, and music is math. And what we want to do is we want to be able to orchestrate this musical medley of movement and conduct the instrument, which is you, your body weight, your mass, your being, in just this harmonious state that gives you flow, it gives you confidence that can't be purchased and it can't be faked. You either can or you can't. And if you practice correct things, well, then you can.
Awesome, man. I love it. Thank you, David. Thanks so much for doing this chat. Yeah, we'll do one again in a month or a couple of months' time. I'm hoping to come out to San Diego. We'll see where that lands. Possibly towards the end of the year, but I'd love to connect it. I feel like we've only met once, and it was like 2 wild weeks, and I feel like we're really good friends, but we only met once. It's crazy. But I've got to come out.
Well, but it was an intense, concentrated period with many days. And
It was
you
intense.
let me know. Yeah. Yeah, right. I was in definitely a crazy phase. But when you come, you're staying at my place, because those are the intangible moments where the friendship is really developed.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll get deeper and deeper and closer, and I'm up for that. I love what you're about. I think everyone in here that's listening right now, in the live chat, appreciates what you do. There's people been leaving more comments. Keep leading from the front. I'll keep trying to translate and share what I can as well as I go. If you want to get a rope, I sell them. If you're in UK, Europe, weartherope.com. If you're in America, weckmethod.com. The rope I
Well,
started.
there's winding rope, there's slush ropes,
There we
there's
go.
Philippine ropes. Like, I want to promote everybody who's in the rope flow community. I want them to thrive, and there's enough people on the planet wherever, we don't
Absolutely.
have to hoard, right?
Yeah.
Go to the one who's going to not cost the most in shipping. And what'll end up happening is, if you fall in love with it, you're going to want more than one rope. And there's people who doing cool things with their ropes.
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Thank you, David. Thanks everyone that's tuned into the live
Thank
chat.
you.
Speak to you all again soon.
Every step stronger.